Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We have an absolute cracker to get into. It's Novak Djokovic versus Rafael Nadal, and it's the last ever time they're going to play. Well, at least from what I know, anyway. So Rafael Nadal will be retiring the Davis Cup next month. So this is going to be the last chance to play Novak, most likely. It's an exhibition, of course, and the Six King Slam for a third place playoff. I mean, it doesn't really mean much. It's an exhibition. It's not going to affect the head to head, but both players, I'm sure, will be putting on a very good show. Both players will be putting their best foot forward, especially Nadal, given that, look, I mean, he's not got many matches left until he hangs it up, and we might see him in some Masters kind of type exhibition matches with maybe like Federer or Djokovic after he retires, for example, but this is really the best we're going to get for a while, you would imagine. And the Six Kings Slam has given us some really good matchups because Nadal played Alcaraz, and that was entertaining, and Djokovic played Sinner. Both ended up losing. Djokovic in 3 sets pushed Sinner pretty close and actually bageled him in the tiebreaker 7-love, which is interesting. And then Nadal lost in straight sets 6-3, 6-3 to Alcaraz. Alcaraz and Sinner had previously come through their quote-unquote quarterfinals against Daniel Medvedev and Holger Rune, respectively. Both players beaten in straight sets. And now we're in a position where we've been set up with, I mean, it's the most ideal scenario, I think, in all honesty. I mean, it would have been good, of course, to see, Nadal Sinner or Djokovic Alcaraz. Yeah, of course, that'd be great. But I think just in the scope of this tournament, the fact that Nadal Djokovic is, an incredible rivalry, 31-29 in favor of Djokovic. It's just, in my opinion, it's the best rivalry ever in men's tennis, the best. And what's really interesting is that Novak, obviously had some great rivalries with Federer, with Murray, and Wawrinka, for example, others. But he says that Nadal, that rivalry or this rivalry was and has been the biggest driver for him throughout his career. It's pushed him to it's pushed him to go beyond his limits on countless occasions, and he's very grateful for that. And I think it has been the best rivalry, I think, in men's tennis. And I know if people talk about Federer and Nadal, and it was 24, I think 18 in favor of Nadal. And yes, I get that Federer won quite a few matches towards the end of that rivalry, but it just, for me, this Nadal Djokovic rivalry, and I know they haven't played a lot on hard court recently, but just over the scope of their careers, it's been phenomenal. On indoor hard, from what I know, and I had to control through their head-to-head, it's 4-2 in favor of Djokovic, and majority of those coming at the ATP Tour Finals. One was at the Paris Masters, which Djokovic won. So, yeah, you would expect Djokovic to have the upper hand in an indoor tournament because Nadal has never won an indoor tournament, which is interesting. Well, sorry, he's never won the ATP Tour Finals anyway, and he's never won the Paris Masters. So that's a couple of big tournaments missing on his resume, and he's got close. He's made the ATP Tour Finals final before, and just hasn't managed to get over the line. But for Djokovic, he is arguably the best player on indoors or indoor hard courts ever. He's that good. So it's going to be a real tough test, I think, for Rafa, and I'm sure he'll put his best foot forward, but it's going to be tough. And I'm not going to go into it in massive detail, but I'm going to break down tactically how I think it's going to play out. So, and then ultimately give you guys my prediction. Before we do actually as well, and I know we're kind of half through the video, but do remember that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. So for Nadal, and I don't think we need to talk about Djokovic too much because he's a big favourite in this. I think that's fair to say. We saw what happened at the Olympics, 6-1, 6-4. I mean, Nadal showed some flashes, but Djokovic was very comfortable. And given that it's an indoor hard court, he's going to have even more of an advantage. Yes, Nadal looks a bit better than he did at the Olympics, but he's still nowhere near, I think, the level that Djokovic, Alcaraz, and Sinner have been at throughout this year. But what is a positive from especially the Alcaraz match is one, it wasn't a complete domination. Yes, it was relatively comprehensive, but Nadal's competitive for periods of that match. But one thing he did really well against Alcaraz, and what I think you'll have to do against Djokovic and be brave and do it against Djokovic if he wants to have a chance of winning and competing, to the best of his ability, is to come to the net as much as possible. And obviously, that doesn't mean coming to the net and just rushing it constantly, but coming to the net as much as possible when the opportunity arises. So trying to be tactical with it. And I think coming to the net comes off the back of aggressive play from the back of the court, and he's going to have to take more risk from there. And he did that against Alcaraz, and he had a lot of success when he did do that. His serve is not massive. I think he's still probably struggling with the abs and other bits, so he's not popping massively. So he's going to have to rely quite heavily on the forehand, especially, and going big off that wing early doors in the rallies. Whether it's the return +1 or serve +1, and making sure that he's really going for those targets early doors, and then trying to come to the net in the next 2, 3 shots in the rally. Because the longer a rally goes on against someone like Djokovic, the harder it's going to be, because Nadal physically is not moving as quickly as he used to. And yes, he had a couple of longer points against Alcaraz that he won, but again, majority of those points were won at the net. He eventually then came to the net and finished it off. He did hit a few forehand winners and some explosive winners from the baseline, but what Djokovic is so good at doing against all players is hitting with really good depth. And Alcaraz can sometimes be the culprit of hitting a bit flatter and dropping it slightly shorter, and it comes on quite nicely for Rafa in those instances. Whereas I feel like Djokovic won't give him those types of chances. And also, look, he's played Rafa so many times, so he knows what to do in these scenarios. And I think for Nadal, he needs to be really aggressive in this match, try and shorten the points. He's got great hands, as we saw against Alcaraz. Utilize the drop shot when he can as well. Just try and shorten it and be aggressive with the forehand, and then see what happens. Because the longer the rallies, I mean, the harder it's going to be for him. He doesn't want to engage in those types of rallies with Novak, who is arguably, I mean, he's got one of the best shot tolerance abilities, I think, of all time. Novak, and doesn't make any mistakes. He's very calculated, very precise, and he's also been serving really well as well for the last few years. And that's going to make it difficult in the return games for Nadal. So Nadal will need to look after his own service games. As I said, go big behind that as well. And yeah, I mean, look, obviously the lefty whip of Nadal's not going to have as much effect on indoor hardcourt as it would on clay. Novak's backhand is one of the best, if not the best of all time, you could argue. And yeah, as I said, I think it's going to be really crucial that Nadal is aggressive, I think, with that forehand side. For Novak, of course, he's going to try and get Rafa to move as much as possible, move him side to side. If he needs to stretch the rallies, he will. But he'll try and push him back with depth, and he'll go big, I think, with the first serve, and he'll enjoy it. I saw him against Sinner, and yes, it looked like he was played very seriously, but also I didn't think he had 100% intensity, though, if I'm being honest, in that, whereas I feel like Sinner was. So the fact that he managed to take a tiebreaker off him, I think, is a real positive. But we'll see how Rafa gets on. I'm hoping that he's able to roll back the years, even if it's just for a couple of sets, and really show us what he's made of. And I mean, if he takes a set of Djokovic, I would be surprised, but very pleased, because it, would be a really, really good showing from him. If I'm not mistaken, I think that would be incredible showing. So hopefully we get that, and I'm looking forward to it. Guys, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating review if you're listening on podcast platform. I'm going to go for Djokovic in straight sets. I think maybe once it'll be a tiebreaker. But yeah, I'm finding it hard to justify a Nadal win or Nadal taking a set. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Will Nadal take a set, or will it be comprehensive for Djokovic, or will Nadal even win? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well.